A poor ward attendant in Enugu stood up for an old man that everybody in her hospital had already decided was nobody. She stood up for him in front of her supervisor. She stood up for him in front of a rich woman who was used to getting whatever she asked for. And she paid for it with her job, with her good name, and with almost everything she had left. But what she did not know was that the quiet old man lying in bed 6 of Ward 14 was not a poor man at all. He was carrying a secret. When that secret finally came out, the same corridor where she had been disgraced became the very place where a powerful man was disgraced instead. Who was the old man in Ward 14? And what happened on the day the sacked ward attendant walked back through those hospital gates? Stay with us as we uncover this touching story from the very beginning. Dear lovely viewers, if you enjoy the stories we share on this channel, please support us by subscribing. Your support truly means a lot to us. Now let us step into this powerful story together. The sun had not fully risen over Enugu when Adaeze Nwankwo woke up. It was a few minutes after 4 in the morning. In the small room she shared with her mother in a bakba, the darkness was still thick. The only light came from a small lamp she had learned to switch on without making noise. She sat up slowly on her mattress on the floor. Her mother, Adaeze Nwankwo, was still sleeping on the bed by the wall. Her breathing was heavy and uneven, the way it had been for almost 3 years now. Even in sleep, her face looked tired. Her ankles were swollen again. Adaeze got up quietly and began to prepare for the day. By 5:30, she had swept the room and washed the 2 plates from the night before. She had boiled pap for her mother and set her mother's tablets on a saucer beside the bed. She counted them the way she counted them every morning. 2 for the blood pressure, 1 for the blood. 1 small white one that she had not been able to buy for 11 days. Adaeze looked at the empty space where the 4th tablet should have been. Then she covered the saucer with a small cup and picked up her bag. Her mother stirred. "Ada," she said softly, "you are going already." "Yes, Mama. My shift starts at 7. Her mother held her hand and looked at her face. "Did you eat?" "I will eat at work, Mama." Her mother said nothing for a moment. She knew her daughter well enough to know what that answer usually meant. "Ada," she said, "God will not forget us." Adaeze smiled. "Amen, Mama." She kissed her mother's hand and stepped out into the cold morning. A bakba was already awake. Traders were arranging their goods. Okada riders were warming their engines. Adaeze walked to the junction, joined a bus, and paid her fare. 40 minutes later, she got down on Ogui Road, in front of a large white building with a blue gate and a wide compound. A signboard stood at the entrance. Cornerstone Specialist Hospital, Enugu. Adaeze had been working inside that building for 2 years and 4 months. She was a ward attendant. She was not a nurse. She was not a doctor. She was the person who mopped the floors between the beds. She was the person who carried the bedpans. She was the person who changed the sheets when a patient soiled them at 2 in the morning. She was the person who bathed the old men who could no longer bathe themselves. She was the person who held the basin while a nurse changed a dressing. She was the person who pushed the trolley to the laboratory and back. Her salary was 38,000 naira every month. Her mother's dialysis cost 25,000 naira for 1 session, and her mother needed 2 sessions every week. Anyone who could count knew that those 2 numbers could not live in the same house. That was why Adaeze had borrowed from almost every person she knew, and why she had sold her wristwatch, then her 2nd pair of shoes, then the small gold earrings her late father had bought for her mother before he died. But there was something else about Adaeze that most people in that hospital did not know. 3 years earlier, she had been admitted into the School of Nursing in Enugu. She had passed the examination on her first attempt. She had bought her white uniform. She had sat in the front row for 2 months and 1 week without missing a single class. Then her mother collapsed in the kitchen on a Sunday afternoon. By the following Friday, a doctor had used the words kidney failure. By the end of that month, Adaeze had stopped going to school. She did not stop learning, though. She kept a small notebook in the pocket of her uniform. Whenever a doctor said something during ward rounds, she wrote it down. When a patient's chart used a word she did not know, she copied the word and looked for somebody to explain it. Some of the nurses laughed at her for it. Nurse Ifeoma Ude did not laugh. Ifeoma was the only one on Ward 14 who treated Adaeze like a colleague and not like furniture. "You should have finished that school," Ifeoma told her one day. "I will finish it," Adaeze said. "When?" Adaeze smiled and continued mopping. "When God says so." Ward 14 was the general male ward. It had 16 beds and 2 rows of 8, 1 working ceiling fan, 2 that did not work, and windows facing the back of the compound. It was not the private wing. In the private wing, the rooms had air conditioners and a bell beside every bed. On Ward 14, if a patient needed help, he called out, and if nobody heard him, he waited. Adaeze heard them. That was one thing everybody agreed on. If a man on Ward 14 called for help, Adaeze heard him. And then there was Mr. Kelechi Anyaso. Mr. Kelechi was the senior ward supervisor. He was in charge of the ward records, the ward daybook, the drug requisitions, and the billing entries for every patient admitted into wards 12, 13, and 14. He wore a short-sleeved shirt and a tie every single day, even in the heat, and he carried a black file under his arm the way some men carry authority. He had a way of speaking to attendants that made them look at the floor. "Adaeze, this floor is not clean." "Yes, sir. I will do it again." She always did it again. She never argued with him. Not because she was afraid of him, but because arguing with Mr. Kelechi cost money, and she did not have money to spend on arguments. That was Adaeze Nwankwo's life on the morning of the 11th of March. She did not know it, but that was the last ordinary morning she would have for a very long time. Because at 10 minutes past 9 that same morning, a taxi stopped in front of the emergency entrance, and an old man came out of it alone. He was tall, but age had bent him a little. He wore a plain brown kaftan that had been washed many times. On his feet were rubber slippers. In his hand was a walking stick and a small black nylon bag. He had no wife with him, no children with him, and no driver waiting. He walked to the reception counter by himself and stood in the queue like everybody else. By the time Adaeze saw him, he was already lying on a trolley outside the treatment room, breathing badly, with a nurse fixing a drip into his arm. The admission clerk brought the file to the ward at midday. Adaeze read the front of it while she prepared the bed. Name Obiora Eze. Age 79 years. Occupation retired. Address Coal Camp, Enugu. Next of kin none provided. No next of kin? She asked. The clerk shrugged. He said his people are far. He gave a number, but the number is not going through. Adaeze looked at the old man on the trolley. "Put him on bed 6, she said. Bed 6 was the best bed on Ward 14. It was directly under the one ceiling fan that worked, and it was beside the window, so in the afternoon there was air. The nurses always kept bed 6 for whoever was worst." That evening, when the ward was quiet, Adaeze brought him a small flask of pap. "Papa, please try and eat something." The old man opened his eyes slowly. "My daughter, I am not hungry." "Papa, they gave you medicine at 4 o'clock. If you take medicine on an empty stomach, it will trouble you." He looked at her for a moment, then sat up slightly. "You are correct." She helped him up and put the flask in his hands. "What is your name?" he asked. "Adaeze." "Adaeze," he repeated. "A king's daughter. And what do you do here?" "I am the ward attendant, Papa." "Ah." He nodded slowly. "So you are the one who carries everything." She smiled and did not answer that. Over the next few days, Adaeze noticed some strange things about the old man in bed 6. The first thing was his hands. She noticed it the first time she helped him wash. They were not the hands of a man who had spent 79 years digging, or carrying, or hammering. They were soft. The nails were short and clean. There was a pale mark on his wrist, the kind of mark a wristwatch leaves when it has been worn in the sun for 30 years. The second thing was his English. When he spoke to the doctors, he spoke like a man who had spent his life in rooms where people listened to him. He never raised his voice. But when he asked a question, the doctors answered carefully. The third thing was the notebook. He kept it under his pillow with a short pencil, and he wrote in it almost every day. Adaeze did not read it, but she noticed what came before the writing, because what came before the writing was always a question. "Adaeze," he said one morning, "when a patient here cannot pay for drugs, what happens?" "There is a free shelf, Papa." "In the store." The foundation supplies it. He looked up. Which foundation? The one that built the East Wing, Papa. Enugu Foundation. Their name is on the wall outside. He wrote something. And do people know about that shelf? He asked. Adaeze paused with the sheet in her hands and thought about it honestly. Some know, she said. Some do not. Who is supposed to tell them? Papa, that is the supervisor's work. He wrote for a long time after that. Adaeze laughed at him gently one evening. Papa, what are you writing every day? Are you writing a book? The old man smiled. I was a clerk for many years, he said. When you write things down for 40 years, your hand does not know how to stop. A clerk, she repeated. A clerk, he said. She believed him. Why would she not believe him? He was an old man in a faded kaftan on a public ward with no next of kin and no visitors and a bill that had not been paid. But he asked about her too. Adaeze, he said one afternoon, where is your father? He died when I was 14. And your mother? Adaeze was quiet for a moment. Then she said it plainly, because there was no other way to say it. My mother is sick, Papa. Her kidneys have failed. She goes for dialysis 2 times a week when I have money, and 1 time a week when I do not. The old man put down his notebook. How long? 3 years now. And you carry it alone? I am her only child, Papa. He said nothing for a while. The fan turned above them. Somewhere down the ward a man coughed. Adaeze, he said finally, if somebody gave you plenty of money today, what would you do with it? She thought that was a strange question from a man who could not pay his own bill, but she answered it anyway. 2 things, Papa. First, I would buy my mother a new kidney. She smiled a small smile. Second, I would go back and finish nursing school. He turned his head sharply. You were in nursing school? 2 months and 1 week. Then Mama collapsed. The old man looked at her for a very long time. Then he picked up his notebook again, and this time he wrote for almost 5 minutes without stopping. The trouble started on a Thursday. That morning, a big Jeep parked in the space reserved for ambulances, and a woman came out of it wearing a heavy gold necklace and a lace blouse that must have cost more than Adaeze earned in 4 months. Her name was Mrs. Adaeze Nwankwo. Her elder brother, a building contractor, had been in the private wing for 5 days, but a burst pipe had closed 3 private rooms for repairs, and he had been moved temporarily to Ward 14. Mrs. Nwankwo walked in, took 1 look around, and put her handkerchief over her nose. Who is in charge here? She asked loudly. Mr. Kelechi Anyaso appeared within 30 seconds, smiling. Good morning, madam. I am the supervisor. How may I help you? She pointed at bed 6. My brother will take that one, she said. Mr. Kelechi looked at bed 6. Madam, that bed is occupied. I can see that it is occupied, Mrs. Nwankwo said. That is why I am telling you. It is the only bed under a working fan. My brother is a diabetic. He cannot lie down in this heat. Madam, I understand. Then move that one. She waved her hand at the old man without looking at him. Put him somewhere. Adaeze was standing at the linen cupboard with a stack of sheets in her arms. She stopped. Mr. Kelechi walked over to bed 6 and looked down at the old man in the brown kaftan. Papa, you will move. The old man opened his eyes. Where will I move to, my son? There is a stretcher in the corridor. By the toilets. You will manage there. By the toilets, the old man repeated quietly. Yes. Mrs. Nwankwo stepped closer and looked at the old man properly for the first time. Old man, she said, when you were young, did you not work? Every one of us worked. That is why some of us can pay. Is it our fault that you did not plan for your old age? You cannot come and be lying down in the best bed in a hospital that you are not paying for. Somebody at the far end of the ward laughed. It was a short, ugly laugh, and then it stopped. Mr. Kelechi turned and spoke loudly enough for the whole ward to hear. Let me explain something to all of you. This man has been here for 9 days, and he has not paid 1 kobo. Not 1 kobo. He is a charity case. So when a paying patient needs a bed, the charity case will move. That is how a hospital works. And then the old man did the thing that broke Adaeze's heart. He did not argue. He did not shout. He did not tell them who he was. He simply said, "It is all right. and began to gather his walking stick and his small nylon bag, and he pushed his thin legs slowly toward the side of the bed to get down. An old man with a chest infection, obediently getting up to go and lie beside a toilet. Adaeze put the sheets down on the cupboard. "Sir." Mr. Kelechi turned. "What?" "He cannot go to the corridor, sir." The whole ward turned to look at her. Mr. Kelechi's face changed slowly. "Excuse me?" "Sir, he is on antibiotics for a chest infection." Adaeze's voice was shaking, but the words came out clearly. Dr. Onuoha wrote in his chart that he must stay under the fan and away from draft. You can check it. The corridor by the toilets has no fan and the back door is always open. If we put him there, he will be back on oxygen by tomorrow morning. Mrs. O'Cake stared at her. "Who is this one?" "I am the ward attendant, Ma." "The ward attendant." Mrs. O'Cake gave a short laugh. "You, a common ward girl, are standing here talking to me about my brother." "Ma, I am not talking about your brother. Your brother can have any other bed on this ward, and I will make it myself, with clean sheets right now. I am only talking about this one man, and only because of his chest." Mr. Kelechi took a step toward her. "Adaeze, move him." Adaeze looked at him. And then she said the sentence that changed her entire life. "Sir, if you want him moved out of a bed that a doctor assigned to him, please write it in the ward daybook and sign your name under it. Once you sign it, I will move him immediately." The ward went completely silent. Mr. Kelechi Anyaso stood very still. Something crossed his face. It was not anger. It was something colder than anger, and it was gone in half a second. Because Mr. Kelechi Anyaso did not want to sign his name under anything in that daybook. Not that day. Not any day. And nobody in that ward, including Adaeze, understood yet why. "Fine," he said at last. He turned to Mrs. O'Cake and smiled. "Madam, let us find your brother a better arrangement. Come with me to my office." They walked out together, and the ward stayed quiet for a long time after they left. Adaeze picked up the sheets. Her hands were still shaking. The old man in bed 6 was watching her. "You should not have done that," he said gently. "Papa, you have a chest infection. That man will not forget it." Adaeze straightened his blanket. "Then he will not forget it." "Lie down, Papa." Mr. Kelechi did not forget it. The following Monday, the new duty roster went up on the board outside the nurse's station. Adaeze's name was on night shift. Every single night for 3 weeks. No breaks, no rotation. Her name had also been removed from the overtime list, which was where the extra 8,000 naira a month came from. And she had been given the sluice room and the mortuary corridor, the 2 duties everybody hated, which were normally shared among 4 attendants. Ifeoma saw the roster and was angry. "Ade, this is wickedness. Go and report it." "Report it to who?" Adaeze asked. "He is the one you report to. Then go to Dr. Onuoha." "Ifeoma, Dr. Onuoha is a good man, but he will call Mr. Kelechi and ask him, and Mr. Kelechi will say the roster is his responsibility and the matter will end there. And after that, my life here will become worse than it already is." So she took it. For 3 weeks she left a bakpa Nike at 5 in the evening and came back at 8 in the morning, and slept for 4 hours and got up to boil her mother's food. "Ada, you are thinner," her mother said. "Mama, it is only the night shift." Then came the matter of the drugs. On the second Friday of the night shift, Adaeze went to the ward store for the old man's antibiotic. The prescription said 2 more days. The storekeeper checked the free shelf and shook her head. "It is finished." "Finished? Since when?" asked the supervisor. He signed the last requisition. Adaeze went to Mr. Kelechi's office. He did not look up from his file. "The foundation shelf is finished," he said. "The next supply is at the end of the month. Sir, the man is on day 8 of a 10-day course. If he stops now, the whole treatment is wasted." Mr. Kelechi finally looked up and he smiled a small smile. "Then he should pay for it," he said. "Sir, he has no money." "Then that is not my problem, is it?" He went back to his file. "Or maybe the ward attendant will pay for it. She likes to make decisions on this ward." Adaeze walked out of that office and stood in the corridor for a moment. Then she went down to the pharmacy across the road on Ogui. The 2 remaining days of the antibiotic cost 4,200 naira. She had 6,000 naira in her purse. It was what was left of her salary, and it was supposed to cover her transport for the rest of the month and part of her mother's session on Saturday. She bought the drugs. Then, because she had spent her transport money, she walked home that morning. From Ogi Road to Abakbanaiki. It took her 1 hour and 50 minutes, and it rained on her for the last 30 of those minutes, and by the time she got to her door, her shoes were finished. "Ada, where is your bus fare?" her mother asked. "Mama, I felt like walking." 2 days later, Fioma pulled her aside behind the linen store. "Adaeze," she whispered, "on Wednesday evening I passed the car park. Mr. Kalechi's boot was open. There were 4 cartons inside it, and they had the foundation sticker on them. The blue and white one. The same one on the free shelf." Adaeze's stomach turned over. "Did you take a picture?" "Adaeze, he was standing right there. If he had turned around and seen me with a phone, I would be sacked before morning." Adaeze nodded slowly. "Then we cannot say anything. So we should keep quiet?" "Ioma, you have 3 children. I have a mother on dialysis. What we saw is not proof. It is a story. And in this country, a poor person's story does not win against a rich person's paper." She was right about that. She was more right than she knew. What Adaeze did not know was that on that same rainy morning when she walked home from Ogui Road, an old man had been standing at the window of Ward 14, holding his drip stand for balance, watching a young woman walk out through the gate with a nylon bag over her head and no money for a bus. And that old man had written something in his notebook. That night, long after visiting hours had ended, a car stopped outside the hospital gate. A man got down. He was in his 50s, well-built, and although he wore a simple gray shirt with no tie, everything about the way he moved said that he was not a man who queued for anything. He gave the night security officer a folded note and walked into the building without signing the visitor's book. He went straight to Ward 14 and stopped beside bed 6. "Chief," he said quietly. The old man opened his eyes. "Chukwudi, you are late." Barrister Chukwudi Ona pulled a plastic chair close and sat down, looking around the dark ward with obvious discomfort. "Chief, I am begging you," he said. 23 days on a public ward. Your doctor in Lagos asks me every day if you have lost your mind. Tell him my mind is exactly where I left it." The old man raised himself onto one elbow. "Chukwudi, the report they sent us in January said our free bed program is running at 94% efficiency. The paper you brought me in February said applications to that same program have fallen by 71% in 2 years, while this ward stays full every single night. I have been lying in this bed for 23 days. Do you know how many patients here have been told that the free bed program even exists? How many? None." The old man lay back down. "Not one. I have asked every man who could still talk. They all think somebody must be paying for me out of pity. Do you understand what that means? It means the money is going into the building, and something in this building is eating it before it reaches the bed." The lawyer was quiet. The old man in the faded brown kaftan was Chief Obiora Eziugo. He had built Eziugo Holdings from a single lorry and a license, in the years when nobody was lending money to a young man from coal camp. He had run it for 41 years and retired as chairman 3 years earlier. With a large part of what he had made, he had set up the Eziugo Foundation, and the first thing that foundation ever did was to build the east wing of Cornerstone Specialist Hospital, and to endow the free beds, the free drug shelf, and the subsidized dialysis unit. He had done it for a reason he had never put in any press release. In 1987, his wife Nenena had died in a general ward in this same city, on a stretcher in a corridor, waiting for a bed that was being kept for somebody who could pay. He had been 29 years old with nothing in his pocket, and he had knelt in front of a hospital clerk and begged, and the clerk had not looked up. He had never forgotten what it felt like to be invisible in a building full of people whose job was to see you. "You could have sent an auditor," the lawyer said. "An auditor sees paper." The old man smiled in the dark. "A man who only reads reports will only ever know what the person writing the report wants him to know. I did not want to know what the paper says, Chukwudi. I wanted to know what it feels like." "And what does it feel like?" 4 days ago, a woman in gold told me I was lying in a bed I had not earned, and a man in a tie told this ward that I was a charity case, and they wanted to put me on a stretcher beside a toilet. He turned his head. I built this wing. My wife's name is on the plaque at the entrance, and they wanted to put me beside the toilet. The lawyer's jaw tightened. Chief, let me end this tonight. One phone call. No, not yet. I have not seen enough. The lawyer breathed out slowly. What else do you want to see? Chief Obiora Enugu reached under his pillow and brought out his small notebook. There is a girl on this ward, he said. A ward attendant. Adaeze Nwankwo. She was the only person in that room who opened her mouth for me. Find out what she earns. Find out where she lives. And find out why a woman who was admitted into nursing school is emptying bedpans instead. Chief, why? Because a man can lie in his report, the old man said, and a man can lie to my face. But nobody can lie about who they are at 6 o'clock in the morning when they think nobody important is watching. 3 days later, the letter arrived from the foundation. It was short and polite. It announced that the Enugu Foundation had commissioned a routine reconciliation of all indigent program records at Cornerstone Specialist Hospital for the preceding 24 months. All ward daybooks, receipt booklets, drug requisitions, and admission files were to be made available. Dr. Emeka Onuoha, the medical director, circulated it to all heads of department and thought nothing more about it. Mr. Kelechi Anyaso read it in his office with the door closed, and he did not move for 11 minutes. Because Mr. Kelechi Anyaso knew exactly what a reconciliation would find. For 22 months, he had been running a very simple arrangement. When a patient came into wards 12, 13, or 14 who qualified for the Foundation's free bed program, he did not tell the family the bed was free. He told them what the bed cost. Then he told them kindly, quietly, as a favor, that he could arrange for them to pay him directly in cash so the paperwork would move faster. The families paid. They were grateful. Some of them thanked him with their whole hearts. He entered those patients in the ledger as Foundation cases, which they were. The Foundation paid the hospital for them, which it did, and the cash went home in his bag. He had done the same with the free drug shelf, signing the requisitions and moving the cartons to a chemist at New Haven who paid well and asked nothing. Altogether, across 22 months, it came to 2,460,000 naira. Now a forensic team was going to open 41 patient files and find 41 families who would say, "We paid cash," and then they were going to ask the only question that mattered. Who did you pay? And that was when he thought of Adaeze Nwankwo. He did not need much. That was the terrifying thing about it. He barely needed anything at all. First, there was the ward daybook. At the end of every shift, the attendant on duty signed the bottom of the page to confirm the bed count and the linen return. Adaeze's signature was on hundreds of pages. That was simply her job. Second, there was the receipt page. 8 months earlier, the receipt officer had traveled for a burial, and Mr. Kelechi had called Adaeze into his office, given her a booklet, and told her to write out a set of entries because he was late for a meeting. She had done it and thought nothing of it. That page carried her handwriting and her initials, and it sat in a used booklet in a drawer in his office. Third, there was the locker. On the fourth morning at 6:04, Mr. Kelechi Anyaso let himself into the female changing room with the master key. He put the used receipt booklet at the bottom of Adaeze's locker under her spare uniform. On top of it, he put 85,000 naira in cash, held together with a rubber band. Then he locked the locker, went to his office, and waited until 9:30 when there were plenty of people around. Then he made a discovery. They called Adaeze off the ward at 10 o'clock. She was in the middle of changing bed 11 when Ifeoma came in, and Ifeoma's face was wrong. "Adaeze, administration is calling you. Now, let me finish this bed." "Adaeze," Ifeoma said, "come now." The small conference room on the first floor had a long table and 8 chairs and a picture of the hospital's foundation stone on the wall. There were 4 people waiting in it. Mrs. Nkiru Agbo from Human Resources sat at the head of the table with a file open in front of her. Dr. Emeka Onuoha sat on her right looking uncomfortable. A security officer stood by the door. And Mr. Kelechi Anyaso sat with his black file and his hands folded, looking straight ahead like a man at a funeral. On the table, in front of Mrs. Agbo, was a bundle of money and an old receipt booklet. "Sit down, Adaeze," Mrs. Agbo said. She turned the booklet around. "Is this your handwriting?" Adaeze looked at the page. Her stomach dropped. "Ma, that is my handwriting. But I wrote that page 8 months ago. Mr. Kelechi gave me the booklet in his office and told me to write it because the receipt officer had traveled." Everybody turned to look at Mr. Kelechi. Mr. Kelechi looked genuinely puzzled. "Madam, I have never given a receipt booklet to a ward attendant in my life. It is against procedure. Why would I do that?" "He gave it to me, Ma, in his office, in July. Do you have anything in writing?" Mrs. Agbo asked. Adaeze opened her mouth. Then she closed it. "No, Ma." Mrs. Agbo pushed the money forward. "This 85,000 naira was found in your locker this morning by the supervisor during a routine check, in the same locker as this booklet. Adaeze, do you earn 85,000 naira a month?" "No, Ma." "I earn 38,000. Then where did this money come from?" "Ma, I have never seen that money in my life. Somebody put it there." "Who?" Adaeze's eyes went to Mr. Kelechi. Everybody in that room saw where her eyes went. Mr. Kelechi did not react at all. He simply opened his black file. "Madam, I do not want to say anything against a junior staff. I will only present what is in the records. Since January of last year, 41 patients on my wards were entered as foundation cases, and the foundation was billed for all of them. 9 families have already told the reconciliation team that they also paid cash. Every one of them collected a handwritten receipt at the ward, not at the cash office." He laid the daybook open on the table. "And the daybook for every one of those days is signed at the bottom by the attendant on duty. Adaeze Nwankwo. Adaeze Nwankwo. Adaeze Nwankwo." Page after page after page. "That is only my duty signature," Adaeze said, and her voice was rising now and she could not stop it. "Every attendant signs that book. It is for the bed count and the linen. It has nothing to do with money. It shows who was on the ward," Mr. Kelechi said gently when the money was collected. Dr. Onuoha spoke for the first time. "Nkiru, we should call the families in. We should ask them to describe the person they paid." Mr. Kelechi turned to him at once. "Sir, with respect, that would be very unfair to the families. Some of them are still on admission here. Do we want to drag sick people's relations into a staff disciplinary matter and ask them to point fingers?" Mrs. Agbo nodded. "He has a point, doctor. And we cannot have our staff interviewing witnesses in the middle of the foundation's own audit." Dr. Onuoha sat back. He was not satisfied. But he was a doctor, and this was a paper matter, and the paper was on the table. Mrs. Agbo closed her file. "Adaeze Nwankwo," she said. "Based on what is before this panel, you are dismissed from the service of this hospital with immediate effect for gross misconduct and financial impropriety. Your outstanding salary is withheld pending the outcome of the reconciliation. You are further required to refund the sum of 2,460,000 naira within 30 days, failing which this hospital will hand the matter over to the police." Adaeze heard the words. She understood every one of them separately, and she could not understand them together. "Ma," she said, "the decision is final. Ma, please." Adaeze stood up. Then, without deciding to, she went down onto her knees on the tiled floor of that conference room. "Ma, I beg you in the name of God. I have never collected 1 naira from any patient in this hospital. Not 1 naira. Ma, I have a mother at home. Her kidneys have failed. She goes for dialysis. If I lose this job today, she will not go on Saturday. Ma, please." Mrs. Agbo looked away, and Mr. Kelechi Anyaso said, in a calm and reasonable voice without any anger in it at all, "Everybody has a sick mother. That is not a defense." Adaeze looked up at him from the floor. He looked back at her, and for 1/2 second, something moved at the corner of his mouth. It was almost a smile. "Officer," Mrs. Agbo said, "please escort her to collect her things." They took her down the main corridor. They could have used the back staircase beside the generator. Every member of staff used it. They took her down the main corridor instead, past the nurse's station, past the pharmacy window, past the open double doors of Ward 14, with a security officer on either side of her and a plastic bag in her hand containing one spare uniform, one pair of rubber shoes, a plastic cup, and a small notebook. The corridor was full. Word travels faster in a hospital than in any market in Nigeria. Nobody said anything to her. A cleaner she had trained herself turned her face to the wall. Two nurses stopped talking as she passed and started again when she had gone by. Ifeoma stood at the door of the linen store with tears running down her face and both hands over her mouth, and she did not move because she had 3 children. Adaeze did not look up. She looked at the floor she had mopped every morning for 2 years and 4 months, and she walked on it for the last time. At the double doors of Ward 14, an old man in a brown kaftan stood beside his bed, holding the frame for balance, watching. She did not see him. By that afternoon, a small notice had been typed and pinned to the staff board. It said that Miss Adaeze Nwankwo was no longer a member of staff of Cornerstone Specialist Hospital, that management would not tolerate financial dishonesty from any employee, and that all staff should take note. The weeks that followed were the worst of Adaeze Nwankwo's life. The first thing that happened was that the money stopped. No final salary. No reference letter. Nothing. The second thing was worse. The story traveled. She went to a clinic in New Haven where a matron she knew had once said there was always work for a good attendant. The matron was very kind to her and gave her water and then said, "Adaeze, I heard something. They said something about money at Cornerstone." "Ma, it is not true." "I believe you," the matron said, "but my board will not believe me." After that, it was the same everywhere. A maternity home in a Akara layout, a supermarket, a school, a pharmacy, a hotel on Zik Avenue. Every one of them asked for a reference letter from her last employer, and she had none, and every one of them understood what that meant. Her mother missed her Saturday dialysis. Then she missed the Wednesday one. By the end of the second week, Adaeze Nwankwo's ankles had swollen to twice their size, and she could not lie flat at night because of the water in her chest, and she sat up on the bed with 3 pillows behind her and told her daughter that she was fine. Adaeze sold her phone. That paid for 1 session. Then she sold her mother's sewing machine, the black hand machine her mother had used for 26 years, the one she had trained on as a young girl in Nsukka, the one she had sewn Adaeze's first school uniform on. Her mother cried when the man carried it out of the room. She cried without making any sound, which was much worse. That paid for 2 more sessions. Then Adaeze bought a plastic tray and 40 oranges and a small stool, and she sat at the junction near the Abakpa flyover and peeled oranges for people in traffic from 7 in the morning until dark. On a good day, she made 2,200 naira. On a bad day, she made 600. Ifeoma sent her 5,000 naira, and the next week Ifeoma was queried by administration for unauthorized contact with a dismissed staff, and Adaeze called her from a borrowed phone and begged her never to send anything again. One evening she went home with 11 unsold oranges and 400 naira in her pocket. Her mother was awake when she came in. She took Adaeze's hand and turned it over and looked at the palm, which was cracked from the oranges. "Ada," she said, "do you know what your father used to say about hands? He said, keep your hands clean. Because a clean hand can beg, and God is not ashamed of a beggar. But a dirty hand cannot even beg. A dirty hand can only hide." Adaeze started to cry. Her mother pulled her down and held her head against her chest the way she had done when Adaeze was 7 years old. "They took your job," her mother said. "They did not take your name. Your name is with God, and God keeps better records than any hospital." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, something had started moving. Chief Obiora Ezeugwu was discharged 8 days after Adaeze was dismissed. He walked out of Ward 14 with his walking stick and his black nylon bag, and nobody stopped him because his bill had been quietly settled at the accounts window by a man in a gray shirt who paid cash and left no name. Before he left, he stopped at the nurse's station. "The ward attendant," he said, "the tall one with the notebook. Adaeze. I have not seen her for some days." The nurse on duty looked up and then looked down again. "She is no longer with us, Papa. She resigned. She was sacked. They said she was collecting money from patients' families." They found money in her locker. The old man stood very still. "Thank you," he said. He got into a taxi at the gate and went home to a house in Independence layout that had 11 rooms and a gateman who wept when he saw him. That evening he called Barrister Chukwudi Ona. "Chukwudi, 3 things. First, get me the disciplinary file of a ward attendant called Adaeze Nwankwo. All of it. The panel notes, the exhibits, everything. Done. Second, tell the reconciliation team to stop reading ledgers." The old man's voice was very quiet now. "Tell them to go and find me the patients. Every family entered on those wards as a foundation case for 24 months. I want somebody to sit in front of each one and ask 2 questions. Did you pay cash? And who did you pay it to?" There was a pause on the line. "Chief," the lawyer said slowly, "if the answer to that second question is the same 41 times, do you understand what we are opening?" "I understand perfectly. And the third thing?" "Find me that girl's house," Chief Obiora said. "Not to bring her to me. I will go to her." The file came the next morning, and it was, as the old man had expected, a beautiful file. Neat. Complete. Every page signed and dated. If a man read it in an office in Abuja, he would close it and say that justice had been done efficiently. He read it 3 times. Then he went to Abakban Nike. He did not take a convoy. He did not take the lawyer. He put on the same faded brown kaftan and the same rubber slippers, took his walking stick, got a taxi at the junction like any other old man, and told the driver to stop near the flyover. He found her under a black umbrella with a tray of oranges on a wooden stool, in the heat, with a rag over her shoulder. Adaeze looked up, and for a moment she could not place the face. Then she could. And the first thing she felt was not joy. It was shame. It came over her like water. "Papa," she said, standing up too quickly and almost knocking the tray over. "Papa Obiora, you were discharged. Thank God. Thank God. Papa, sit down, please. Let me get you somewhere to sit." She took the stool, the only one she had, wiped it with her rag and set it in the shade for him. He sat down slowly. "You are selling oranges." "Yes, Papa." "Why?" Adaeze looked at the road. "Papa, they sacked me from the hospital. They said I was collecting money from patients." "Were you?" She turned and looked him full in the face. "No, Papa. I was not." The old man nodded once, slowly, as though she had confirmed a small detail he already knew. "Give me 2 oranges," he said. "Papa, no." "Take them." "Give me 2 oranges, Adaeze, and let me pay for them." So she peeled 2 oranges for him, carefully, in one long spiral the way her mother had taught her, and cut the tops and handed them to him. He brought out a 5,000 naira note. Adaeze looked at it and laughed for the first time in a month. "Papa, I do not have change for that. My whole tray is not up to 2,000 naira. Then keep it." "Papa, no." She pushed his hand back gently. "Take the oranges. They are free. You are my patient." "I am not your patient anymore." "Papa," she said, "you will always be my patient." The old man looked down at the 2 oranges in his hands for a long moment, and he did not speak, because he did not trust his voice. Then he asked, "And your mother?" And that was what broke her. Adaeze Nwankwo sat down on the ground beside her tray of oranges and put her face in her hands and cried in a way she had not allowed herself to cry in front of any human being since the day her mother collapsed in the kitchen. She told him everything. The panel, the money in the locker, the daybook and the receipt page and the 30 days in the police, the sewing machine, that her mother had missed 5 sessions and could not lie flat on Thursday nights, and that she did not know what she was going to do on the 1st of the month when the landlord came. The old man listened to all of it without saying one word. When she was finished, he asked her a question that seemed to come from nowhere. "Adaeze, if somebody opened the door of that nursing school for you again, would you walk through it?" She wiped her face with the back of her wrist and gave a small, tired laugh. "Papa, that door has closed." "Doors are not weather," the old man said. "Doors do not close by themselves. People close them. And what one person closes, another person can open. Papa," she said kindly, "you are a very good man. But do not worry yourself about me. Worry about your chest. How did you come here? Did you take a taxi? I took a taxi. Adaeze reached into her wrapper and brought out her money. She had 400 naira in coins and one 200 naira note that had been folded so many times it was soft as cloth. She put the 200 naira note into the old man's hand and closed his fingers over it. "Papa, take this for your taxi home," she said. "Do not walk in this sun. Your chest is not strong yet." The old man looked down at the folded note in his hand. "Adaeze," he said, "this is your money." "Papa, it is only 200 naira. How much do you have left?" "I have enough." He looked at her for a very long time. And then Chief Obiora Eziugo, who had bought lorries and buildings and companies, and who had signed checks with 6 zeros in them without blinking, took a folded 200 naira note from the hand of a woman selling oranges at a junction and put it into his wallet and did not spend it. "Thank you, my daughter," he said. "Go home, Papa." He stood up, leaning on his stick. "Adaeze," he said, "one more thing. If a letter comes for you from the hospital, do not be afraid of it." She did not understand him, and by the time she thought to ask, he had already crossed the road. Everything that happened after that happened quickly, and Adaeze knew nothing about any of it. The reconciliation team stopped reading ledgers and went out into Enugu. In 11 days, they found 36 of the 41 families and asked each of them the same 2 questions. "Did you pay cash? Who did you pay it to?" 34 said yes. 34 gave the same name. After that, the rest came easily, because a man who steals for 22 months always leaves a road behind him. There was an account on Okpara Avenue in the name of a 22-year-old undergraduate at Nsukka who had never worked a day. Fed with cash deposits every Friday, and Friday was the ward supervisor's off day. There was a chemist at New Haven with a delivery notebook. There was a handwriting report. And there was a corridor camera facing the staff changing rooms, whose footage the hospital kept for 90 days, and which nobody had ever thought to look at, because nobody had ever thought there was anything to look for. Barrister Chukwudiona laid the whole of it out on a table in a house in Independence layout, and Chief Obiora Eziugo went through it page by page for 2 hours without saying anything. When he finished, he closed the folder. "Chukwudi," he said, "call the board." The letter came to Abakpa Nike on a Tuesday, delivered by hand by a dispatch rider. Adeze's hands were shaking so badly that she had to give it to her mother to open. "Dear Miss Nwankwo," it said, "you are hereby required to appear before the board of Cornerstone Specialist Hospital at the boardroom, 1st floor, administrative block, on Thursday the 22nd, at 10 o'clock in the morning, in connection with the reconciliation of foundation accounts." Her mother read it twice. "Ada, what does it mean?" "Mama, I think it means the police." Her mother put the paper down on the bed. "Then let them do their worst. Come here." She made her daughter kneel beside the bed, and she put her 2 swollen hands on her head, and she prayed for 11 minutes without stopping, and by the end of it both of them were crying, and neither of them was afraid. On Thursday morning, Adaeze woke at 4 as she always did. She pressed the blue dress she had worn to her cousin's wedding 4 years before, using a hot cup because the iron had been sold. She wore the 1 pair of shoes she had left, the black ones with the strap that a cobbler at Ogbede had mended twice. She had no money for a taxi, so she left at 6:30 and joined 2 buses and walked the last part. She reached the Blue Gate on Ogui Road at 20 minutes to 10. The security officer at the gate was the same one who had walked her out. He looked at her, then at a paper on his desk, then stood up quickly. "Madam," he said. "Good morning, madam. They said I should escort you upstairs." "Madam?" Adaeze said. He did not answer that. He walked her across the compound. They went in through the main entrance and up the stairs, and the whole way, people stopped. A pharmacist stepped out of the pharmacy window and stared. 2 cleaners stopped mopping. Ifeoma was standing at the top of the stairs with her hands pressed together, and as Adaeze passed, she whispered, "God is not asleep." Adaeze stood outside the boardroom door and breathed and thought about her mother's hands on her head. Then she went in. It was the largest room she had ever stood in inside that building. A long polished table with 12 chairs and bottles of water at every place. 6 members of the hospital board, 3 men and 3 women, none of whom she had ever seen before. Dr. Emeka Onuoha near the middle. Mrs. Nkiru Agbo with a file in front of her, looking as though she had not slept. 2 men in dark suits from the reconciliation team at the far end, with 3 ring binders stacked in front of them. And at the near end, in a new gray suit with a red tie, sitting with his legs crossed and one arm over the back of his chair, was Mr. Kelechi Anyaso. He smiled when he saw her. "Adaeze," he said pleasantly. "You came. Very good. It is always better to settle these things here than in a police station, is it not?" Nobody answered him. "Sit down, Miss Nwankwo," one of the board members said, and pointed at a chair. She sat down on the edge of it and put her hands in her lap. The chairman of the board, a heavy man with white in his beard, cleared his throat. "We are waiting for one more person," he said. They waited. The clock on the wall moved. Mr. Kelechi poured himself a glass of water and drank it and set the glass down. At 3 minutes past 10, the door opened. Barrister Chukwudi Ona came in first, in a black suit carrying a leather folder, and behind him came 2 men in dark suits who stood on either side of the door and did not sit down. And then an old man walked in. He was wearing a dark navy suit with a white shirt, and there was a small red and gold pin on his lapel, and he was leaning on a walking stick. His shoulders were bent. His face was thin and tired and calm. Every single person in that boardroom stood up. The board chairman got up so fast that his chair scraped loudly on the floor. Dr. Onuoha stood with his hand on the table. Mrs. Agbo stood, and her file slid off the table and papers went everywhere, and she did not pick them up. Mr. Kelechi Anyaso stood up too, because everybody was standing. And then he looked at the old man's face. Adaeze had also stood up because everybody had stood up. But she was not looking at the room. She was looking at the old man, and she had already started to move toward him without thinking, the way she had moved toward him 100 times on Ward 14, because his walk was not steady, and there was a chair 4 steps away, and it was her job to see him into it. "Papa Obiora," she said. "Papa, sit down, please. Let me help you." The whole boardroom heard it. The old man looked at her, and something in his face softened completely. "Sit down, my daughter," he said gently. "Today, nobody is going to carry me." He walked to the head of the table on his own. Barrister Ona pulled out the chair. He sat. "Good morning," he said to the room. "Please sit down." They sat. For the benefit of the young woman at the end of this table, the old man said, who has known me for 23 days as a poor man in bed 6, "Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Obiora Ezugo. I founded Ezugo Holdings and ran it for 41 years. I am the founder and life trustee of the Ezugo Foundation." Adaeze's hands went slowly to her mouth. "The Ezugo Foundation built the east wing of this hospital," he continued. "Its endowment carries a little over 70% of the running cost of the general wards, including the free beds program, the free drug shelf, and the dialysis subsidy. My late wife's name is on the plaque at the entrance. Some of you have shaken my hand at a dinner in Abuja." He looked slowly down the table. "On the 11th of March, I checked myself into the emergency department of this hospital under the name Obiora Eze, with no next of kin, no money, and no telephone anybody could reach. I did it because for 2 years the reports you have been sending my foundation have been excellent, and for 2 years the numbers underneath those reports have been telling me a completely different story. I did not want to know what the paper said. I wanted to know what it feels like." The room was completely silent. "I will tell you what it feels like. On my 14th day, a supervisor of this hospital told a full ward that I was a charity case who had not paid 1 kobo and ordered me out of a bed a doctor had assigned to me and onto a stretcher beside the toilets to free that bed for a woman with a gold necklace." Dr. Onuoha closed his eyes. "And out of 11 members of staff who came in and out of that ward that morning," the old man said, "exactly 1 person opened her mouth. Not a doctor. Not a nurse. Not an administrator. The ward attendant. The one you sacked." He turned to the 2 men from the reconciliation team. "Read it." The senior auditor opened the first binder and read for 22 minutes without raising his voice once. He read that 41 patients had been entered on wards 12, 13, and 14 as foundation cases over 24 months, and that the foundation had been billed and had paid for all 41. He read that 36 of those families had been found and interviewed, and that 34 had stated on record that they had also paid cash. To a man who told them it would make the paperwork move faster. He read the name that 34 of them had given. He read the bank statement of an account in the name of Somtochukwu Anyaso, undergraduate, Nsukka, into which 2,380,000 naira had been paid in cash on Fridays. He read 14 entries from a chemist's delivery notebook at New Haven for Foundation batch drugs. He read the handwriting report, which found that the one page in Adaeze Nwankwo's hand had been written with a different pen at a different time from the pages before and after it. And then he put a single photograph on the table and slid it toward the middle. It was a still from the corridor camera. The time in the corner read 6:04. In it, a man in a short-sleeved shirt and a tie was unlocking the door of the female changing room. Nobody moved. Mr. Kelechi Anyaso had gone a strange color. "Sir, Chief. Sir, please. I was carrying out a routine inspection. It is my duty as supervisor to inspect the lockers when there is a report of theft on the ward, and there had been a report. I can bring the report." "Bring it," the old man said. Mr. Kelechi opened his mouth. "There is no report," the old man said. "The reconciliation team has been through every entry in that daybook for 2 years. There is no report of any theft on Ward 14 in March. There is no report of any theft on Ward 14 in the whole of last year." He leaned forward slightly. "Because you never wrote anything down, Mr. Anyaso. That was your whole method. You made your living out of the space between what happened and what was written." He looked at the man for a moment. "Do you remember the day my ward attendant asked you to put a bed transfer in the daybook and sign your name under it? I was lying 2 feet from you. I have never in my life seen a man run from a pen the way you ran from that pen." Mr. Kelechi Anyaso stood up. Then his legs went, and he went down onto his knees on the boardroom carpet, exactly where Adaeze had knelt on the tiles of the conference room downstairs 6 weeks earlier. "Chief, I beg you, in the name of God. I have 4 children. My last-born is 2 years old. Chief, my mother is sick. She has been sick since December. That was why I did it. I swear to God that was why." The room was quiet. Chief Obiora Ezego looked down at him for a long moment. "Everybody has a sick mother," he said quietly. "That is not a defense. I believe those were your exact words, Mr. Anyaso. To that girl. On her knees. In this building." Mr. Kelechi's mouth opened and no sound came out of it. "Get up," the old man said. "Get off the floor. I have no interest in seeing anybody on the floor in a hospital that I built." Mr. Kelechi got up. Then Chief Obiora Ezeugo turned to Barrister Ona and put out his hand, and the lawyer gave him a white envelope. The old man held it for a moment. "Dr. Onuoha," he said. "Mrs. Agbo. On the day you dismissed this young woman, did you take her down the back staircase?" Mrs. Agbo's voice was very small. "No, sir." "Where did you take her?" "Through the main corridor, sir." "Why?" Mrs. Agbo did not answer. "I will answer for you," the old man said. "Because a dismissal that nobody sees does not teach anybody anything. You wanted the staff to see her. You wanted them to look at her and be afraid. That was the purpose of that walk." He stood up, leaning on his stick, and he held out the envelope. But he did not hold it out to Mr. Kelechi Anyaso. He held it out to Adaeze. "Adaeze," he said, "come here." She got up like a person walking in a dream and came around the long table and stood beside him. He put the envelope into her hands. "This is Mr. Anyaso's letter of termination," he said. "It has been signed this morning by the chairman of this board. It is not going to be handed to him in this room by me, and it is not going to be posted quietly on a notice board where nobody sees it, and he is not going to be allowed to go down the back staircase beside the generator." He looked at her. "They walked you down that corridor so that everybody could see," he said. "Let us go and finish the walk." They went out of the boardroom and down the stairs, the whole board, the 2 auditors, the lawyer, the medical director, the head of human resources, and Mr. Kelechi Anyaso walking in the middle of them with his hands at his sides. By the time they reached the ground floor, the corridor was already full. Word travels faster in a hospital than in any market in Nigeria. They lined it the way they had lined it before. Nurses, cleaners, attendants, record clerks, a cook who had left her pot, patients' relatives at the ward doors. Ifeoma near the linen store with her hands over her mouth again, but for a different reason this time. They walked past the nurse's station, past the pharmacy window, and stopped outside the open double doors of Ward 14. Chief Obiora Ezugo turned to face the staff. "My name is Obiora Ezugo," he said, and there was a sound in the corridor like a wave. "Some of you nursed me on that ward for 23 days. Thank you. I have come to correct a matter that was decided in this corridor." He nodded to Adaeze. Adaeze Nwankwo turned to Mr. Kelechi Anyaso and held out the envelope. He looked at it. He did not take it. He stood there in his gray suit and his red tie and his shining shoes, looking at that white envelope in the hand of a woman he had thrown into the street, and he could not lift his arm. And Adaeze did not gloat. She did not smile. Everybody in that corridor was watching her mouth to see what she would say, and what she said was this: "Please take it, sir." Sir. She still called him sir. Mr. Kelechi Anyaso took the envelope with 2 fingers, opened it, and read it, standing in the middle of the corridor. It said that his appointment was terminated with immediate effect, and his entitlements forfeited. It said that a restitution order for 2,460,000 naira had been placed against him and against the account of Somtochukwu Anyaso. And it said that the entire file had that morning been forwarded to the police and to the Financial Crimes Authority, and that the hospital would be a full witness. He read it to the end. Then he folded it and looked up once, and there was nowhere in that corridor for his eyes to land. "Officer," the board chairman said quietly, "please escort Mr. Anyaso to collect his things." 2 security men walked him out, past the nurse's station, past the pharmacy window, out through the main entrance, across the compound, and through the blue gate on Ogui Road. Nobody said a single word until he was gone. Then somebody at the far end started clapping, and within 4 seconds, the whole corridor was clapping and shouting, and a nurse was crying, and Ifeoma had pushed through the crowd with both arms around Adaeze's neck, and Adaeze was standing in the middle of the floor she had mopped for 2 years and 4 months, holding an empty white envelope. There was one more thing that happened in that corridor. Mrs. Adana Okeke had come back that morning to collect a laboratory result, and she had walked into the middle of all of it. Her name was on the auditor's list. She had paid 240,000 naira in cash for a bed the foundation had already paid for, and her refund had been approved that same morning, and nobody had told her yet. She watched an old man in a navy suit turn from the ward doors, and she recognized his face, and she went pale. Then she came forward and stopped in front of him. "Sir, Chief, sir, I did not know. I swear to God I did not know who you were." Chief Obiora Ezugo looked at her with no anger in his face at all, which was somehow much worse. "Madam, on the morning you told me to go and lie down beside a toilet, there were 15 other old men on that ward, and every one of them heard you. Sir, please." "I was not the only old man in that corridor," he said. "I'm simply the only one you will ever apologize to." Then he turned and walked back toward the stairs, and Mrs. Adana Okeke stood there holding her food flask, and nobody in that corridor would meet her eyes. They went back up to the boardroom, and the door was closed, and this time there were only 5 people in the room. The board chairman, Dr. Onuoha, Barrister Ona, Chief Obiora Ezugo, and Adaeze. "Sit down, my daughter," the old man said. She sat. Barrister Ona opened his leather folder and began to read. First, that the dismissal of Adaeze Nwankwo was rescinded in full, and every reference to financial misconduct in her personnel file withdrawn and destroyed. Second, that all salaries withheld since her dismissal would be paid immediately, together with the overtime that had been taken from her in March. Third, that a written apology signed by the medical director and the head of human resources would be posted on the staff notice board where the dismissal notice had hung and read aloud at the next general staff meeting, in front of every member of staff who had watched her walk down that corridor. Adaeze sat with her hands folded in her lap and could not speak. "There is more," the old man said. "Chukwudi." The lawyer turned the page. Fourth, that the Ezugo Foundation had that morning approved a full scholarship in the name of Nena Ezugo, returning Miss Adaeze Nwankwo to the School of Nursing, Enugu, from the beginning of the next session, covering all fees, books, uniforms, hostel accommodation, and a monthly stipend. And on completion, the scholarship extended to a degree in nursing science at the University of Nigeria on the same terms, with a position at the hospital guaranteed on qualification. "Papa," Adaeze said. Her voice had gone. "There is one condition," the old man said. "Only one. Papa, anything. When you qualify, you will work on the general wards for at least 3 years. Not the private wing. The general wards. Because the people in those beds do not need one more person who is very good at paperwork. They need somebody who can hear them when they call." Adaeze put both hands over her face. "Chukwudi," the old man said. "Finish it." Fifth, that the Enugu Foundation had that morning assumed full and unconditional responsibility for the medical care of Mrs. Adaeze Nwankwo of Abakpa, Enugu. All dialysis arrears settled. All future dialysis covered without limit. A full transplant assessment beginning the following Monday at the foundation's cost, including donor matching, the surgery itself wherever it had to be done, all travel, and lifelong care and medication afterward. Adaeze Nwankwo slid off the chair onto the floor of that boardroom. "Get up," the old man said. "Adaeze, get up from there. I have already told you today that nobody kneels in my hospital." She could not get up. Barrister Ona and Dr. Onuoha had to lift her into the chair between them, and she sat there shaking with her hands over her mouth, saying "thank you, thank you, thank you," to nobody in particular. Chief Obiora Ezeugo waited until she was quiet. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his navy suit, took out his wallet, and from the wallet he took a 200 naira note that had been folded so many times it was soft as cloth, and he put it down on the polished table where all of them could see it. The board chairman looked at it, confused. "Let me tell you what that is," the old man said. 11 days ago I went to a junction at Abakpa in an old kaftan and rubber slippers. I found this young woman sitting under an umbrella selling oranges because her mother had missed 5 dialysis sessions, and she had sold her mother's sewing machine to pay for 2 of them. She did not know who I was. She still thought I was a poor old man from coal camp who could not pay his hospital bill. He touched the folded note with one finger. She gave me her last 200 naira so that I would not have to walk home in the sun. Nobody said anything. "I have read this hospital's reports for 2 years," Chief Obiora Ezeugo said. "Audited accounts, satisfaction surveys, efficiency ratings, compliance certificates. Every one of them was signed. Every one of them was beautiful. And every one of them was a lie." He looked around the table. "That note is the only audit report I trust, because she wrote it when she thought nobody important was watching." Adaeze Nwankwo went home that evening in a hospital car. She got down at the junction where she had sold oranges and walked the last part on her own because she wanted to walk, and she went into the room in Abakpa where her mother was sitting up in the bed with 3 pillows behind her. Her mother looked at her face. "Ada, what did they do to you?" And Adaeze knelt beside the bed, which was the only place in the world she was still allowed to kneel, and put her head in her mother's lap, and told her everything, from bed 6 to the corridor. Her mother listened to all of it without saying one word. When it was finished, Adaeze Nwankwo lifted both her swollen hands toward the ceiling of that small room, and she did not shout and she did not dance, because she had no strength for either of those things. She simply said, "God, you remembered us." Then she said, "Ada, the old man, the one in bed 6. What did you do for him?" Adaeze thought about it. "Mama, I did not do anything. I only did my work." Her mother smiled a very small smile. "That is what I thought," she said. "That is why God chose you." Many things happened after that. Mr. Kelechi Anyaso was arrested 9 days later. The restitution order followed him. He sold his car. He sold the 2 plots of land he had bought at Amin. His younger brother's account was frozen, and the boy had to leave school for a session. The case dragged on the way those cases do, and when it was finished, everything he had built in 22 months was gone, and the word that followed him through every office door in Enugu was the same word he had put on Adaeze. Nearly 2 years later, he was standing in a queue at a chemist shop counter at New Haven when a young woman in the blue and white uniform of a student nurse came in and stood behind him. He turned around and saw her, and he could not move. "Good afternoon, sir," Adaeze said politely. He opened his mouth and nothing came out of it, and she paid for what she had come to buy and left, and she never told anybody about it, not even Ifeoma. The Enugu Foundation did not stop at the audit. Two things changed at Cornerstone's Specialist Hospital that year, and both are still there today. The first was a rule. No patient on any general ward may be moved from an assigned bed without a written entry in the daybook, signed and timed by the person ordering the move with a reason. It is a small rule. It takes 10 seconds to obey. Mr. Kelechi Aniaso's entire arrangement would have been impossible under it. The second was a desk. Every general ward now has a patient advocate, whose only duty is to sit with new patients and their families and tell them exactly what they are entitled to, in the language they speak, before anybody asks them for 1 naira. The older staff have a name for both of them that is not written on any document. They call it the Ward 14 rule. Adaeze Nwankwo had her transplant 14 months later. Her donor was her younger sister, who flew back from Kaduna to be tested and wept when they told her she was a match. The surgery took 6 hours. Chief Obiora Eziugo sat in the waiting area for 4 of them with his walking stick between his knees, refusing to go home, telling the nurses that he was family, and by that time, nobody in that hospital was going to argue with him. 2 years and 4 months after the day she was walked out of that gate with a plastic bag in her hand, Adaeze Nwankwo stood in a hall in Enugu on her matriculation day in a white uniform and a starched cap. Her mother was in the 3rd row, on her own 2 feet, in a new wrapper and a head tie, well enough to stand and shout when her daughter's name was called. And in the front row, in a dark navy suit with a small red and gold pin on the lapel, sat a very old man with a walking stick who had refused a seat with the dignitaries and who clapped harder than anybody in that hall. When she came down the steps, she went straight to him. "Papa Obiora," she said. "My daughter," he said. And that was how the story of Adaeze Nwankwo changed. She entered Ward 14 as a poor ward attendant with a mop and a small notebook. She was called a thief in a corridor full of people who knew better and said nothing. She was walked out through a gate with everything she owned in 1 plastic bag. But life did not leave her there. The same corridor that carried her shame carried her vindication, and the same hands that emptied bedpans for a stranger were the hands that were lifted up in the end. This story teaches us that we should never look down on anybody because of what they are wearing or what they are doing for a living. The old man in the faded kaftan was worth more than everybody in that ward put together, and nobody knew it because nobody bothered to look at him properly. The person you are stepping on today may be the person holding the door tomorrow. It also teaches us that kindness has a very long memory. Adaeze did not defend that old man because she thought she would gain something. She defended him when she believed he had nothing. It cost her everything she had, and still she gave him her last 200 naira. Anybody can be kind to a person who can repay them. It takes a real human being to be kind to a person who cannot. And it teaches us one more thing. Wickedness is very good at paperwork. Mr. Kelechi Aniaso had signatures, ledgers, exhibits, and a perfect file, and for 6 weeks the paper won. But paper does not last forever. The truth may walk slowly, and it may arrive late, and it may arrive on the arm of an old man that nobody respected, but it always arrives. So, dear viewers, what lesson did you learn from Adaeze and Chief Obiora's story? Would you have spoken up in that ward, knowing what it might cost you? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. We would truly love to read your comments and hear from you. Another beautiful and inspiring story will be coming your way in a few days. So please subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. That way, you will be among the first to know when our next story is uploaded. And if this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with your friends and family so that they can enjoy it too. Thank you so much for watching, and we truly appreciate your support. May your kindness speak for you on the day you need it most.